To present our second award this evening, it is now my pleasure to introduce one of those incredible past presidents and the recipient of the 2016 JCRC Leadership Award and chairman and president of Perelson Wiener, Ronald Wiener. Joining Ron on stage are the children of our honoree and president, Charlie Temel, Erica, Laura, and Dan, who will begin the presentation by offering a special tribute to their father.
Thank you all for being here tonight to support my dad and the JCRC. It's wonderful to see so many of you here, our friends, our family. We've celebrated so many special and happy occasions together, and we're thrilled to add one more. My name is Dan Temel. I'm Charlie Temel's youngest child, and in the spirit of Passover, I still remember the 4 questions. I want to ask you all, why is this night different from all other nights? It's not just to nosh on mini hot dogs and sushi. We are here to celebrate the JCRC, an organization that has loomed large in our family. We grew up proudly marching in the Celebrate Israel parade and living and learning its core message to connect our Jewish community with our neighbors across the city. We are thrilled to amplify its crucial message tonight.
Hi, America. This night is so special to us because we get to honor our father and role model. And there are so many people here tonight who are here to do the same. My dad appears before you today as a community leader and president of this esteemed organization, but none of that was preordained. He was born in Bogota, Colombia, the son of a Holocaust survivor, and came to the United States at age 9, speaking only a little English. He went to Cornell, where he met a nice Jewish girl from Queens, and they have been on this incredible journey together ever since. He worked his way up in the finance world, but he always taught us that it is vital to make time for the Jewish community. The Jewish Community Relations Council of New York has fit him perfectly. It's a place where he, an immigrant himself, can connect with other minority and immigrant communities in New York to ensure that we all leave this city better than we found it. He's an exceptional leader, and we are so proud of him.
Hi, I'm Laura, and I can just conclude by saying this night is so special for us because we joined together with you, our father's friends, our friends, colleagues, fellow community leaders, to thank him for his hard work and recognize the impact he's had on the Jewish community of New York. Dad, throughout our lives, you've taught us the importance of giving back. To your community, it means more than just giving back. It means connecting with people and understanding that what makes you unique is the best way to connect with a diverse group of people. You've touched so many people's lives, something we can all see here tonight. We look up to him, we love him dearly. Mazel tov, Dad. We are so proud of you.
Delighted to be with you. Delighted to have the opportunity to present to Charlie what will be some small degree of recognition for his work. I'm the immediate past president of the JCRC, and it really is a great honor to present Charlie with the JCRC Leadership Award. We, the JCRC, has a long and proud history of working effectively behind the scenes and in front of the cameras to unite diverse communities and advocate for the rights and interests of the New York Jewish community. For decades, we have worked with our partners, including the highest levels of government and law enforcement, major faith leaders, and diverse community leaders in New York, Westchester, Long Island, and together we have strengthened our Jewish community and all New Yorkers by preventing problems before they occur and managing conflicts when they do arise. Under Charlie's leadership, we have developed a Jewish Leadership Forum in which dozens of representatives from diverse Jewish community organizations come together to discuss common concerns. We have initiated a new Israel missions program in which pastors join us in Israel and then return on their own with their respective congregations. Nearly 500 parishioners from New York have been to Israel due to JCRC's initial investment. JCRC has also spearheaded efforts to keep our community institutions and synagogues secure by helping them secure special security grants from the Department of Homeland Security, something deeply essential after the Pittsburgh charity. And as levels of anti-Jewish actions and prejudice have become more evident in our society, JCRC has proudly unified hundreds of diverse New Yorkers in opposing those who would do us harm. Charlie has also initiated significant administrative changes within the organization that will help the JCRC better navigate the future issues facing our community as we look forward. I'd like to take a moment just to speak a little more personally. I came here in 1967. Charlie came here to New York in 1975, both of us knowing virtually no people here. Charlie and I first met through UJA, Young Leadership Cabinet, and then Charlie pulled a fastie on me at the AJC, where at a meeting I wasn't at, nominated me to chair that. He then, and I, and were able to be involved with Jimmy Tisch and Seymour Zeises, both of whom are here tonight, at the Roundtable Political Action Committee, a pro-Israel PAC, first founded by them and with our active involvement. Our commitments to the community began long before then, as well as to each other and our families. It really is such a joy to have shared our lives, families, and communities together as we have. And how could I not speak of Judy, his wonderful wife? I want to say the wonderful wife. Who is a highly accomplished person in her own right, as well as a wonderful mother. I just want to thank you both again for the privilege and the opportunity to acknowledge you. For these reasons, it's my honor to present the JCRC New York Leadership Award to you, Charlie, President of the JCRC of New York and Managing Director at UBS Financial Services. In recognition of your outstanding communal leadership and dedication to the well-being of the Jewish people. It's very heavy.
The other way around, Charlie, the other way around. Charlie, the other way around.
Charlie,
Turn
turn it around. Thank you, Charlie.
Good evening. Rev, I'm going to use your line. Good evening. Para todos los meseros que están acá, me agradezco mucho por su servicio, nos ayudando mucho. Muchísimas gracias. I also want to acknowledge Mayor Dinkins, State Controller Tom DiNapoli, City Council members, and my fellow Cornellian, Brooklyn Attorney, the Brooklyn DA, Eric Gonzalez. Thank you, Jan and Mark. I'm honored to accept the JCRC's Leadership Award for my night job, being president of the JCRC of New York. It's been a privilege to serve on its board and a lifetime honor to be its president. I value those who came before me, some of whom are here tonight. Ron, thank you for your kind words, your friendship, your leadership, and you were the right guy when we nominated you to be president of the American Jewish Committee. Janice Shorenstein, Matt Marilis, Judah Gribbets, Ken Bialkin, and of course, Malcolm Hoenlein, who was our original executive director of the JCRC. Thank you so much for being here tonight. I would also like to thank the board of directors of the JCRC, and this is sort of the physical stretching part of my speech. I'd like to ask the board to stand up for a second and be acknowledged, because they do a tremendous job. Could you please stand? And I'd also like to ask the staff of the JCRC to stand and be acknowledged for the tremendous job that they do. And I'm thrilled to pass the torch of President to Cheryl Fishbein on July 1st. Cheryl, thank you. Danny, como siempre, muchísimas gracias. Thank you for your service, really distinguished service on behalf of the State of Israel, and in fact, on the City of New York. Thank you so much. And Letitia James, every time I hear you speak, I am inspired. Thank you. You are the right person at the right time in the right job. Thank you so much. We're honored to have you. I also want to thank Jeff Schoenfeld for his distinguished leadership at UJA Federation, and thank UJA Federation, which is our major benefactor. I also want to thank UJA for investing in me, because many years ago they invested in the Young Leadership Program and spent a lot of time and effort on training us, and many of my friends for all these years came out of that program. The odd part about it is one day you wake up and you realize that you're not quite young leadership anymore. I'm overwhelmed as I look around the room and I see so many friends, family, supporters who've given generously to this organization that I love, and thank you. To my children, Erica, Laura, Dan, my love for you is immeasurable. And Judy, my wife, thank you for your love, encouragement along this great adventure. So I'm often asked, what does the JCRC do? The real question is, why does the JCRC do what it does? 43 years ago, the founders of the JCRC defined the role of this agency to protect and enhance the Jewish community of New York. In so fulfilling our mission, we also strengthen and improve all of New York. It wasn't just for us, it was just for everyone. Because when we do it for everyone, we do it for us. We promote a civil society, and we take steps to diminish hateful behavior and create a climate of collaboration, of respect, rather than allowing change to create unrest. That makes for a safer New York. On Israel, we are the central address for communal activism on Israel. Our project, the Celebrate Israel Parade, is the largest public event in support of Israel in the world. It is also the largest intra-group Jewish event in the world. We are able to put together Jews from every stripe and every flavor on Fifth Avenue every year, like no other organization and no other event in the world. And then lastly, the parade is also an opportunity to show the broad support that Israel has in New York. Living peacefully with our neighbors is not an abstract term. It's about the person that lives across the hall. It's the person that lives down the street. It's the person that owns the shop. And it's our neighborhood, it's our kids. Do we work together to come to common goals? Are we there for them when their sorrows and their joys, and are they there for ours? When we ask those questions, and the JCRC asks those questions every day, it creates an environment that does not tolerate hate. It doesn't tolerate injustice. It doesn't tolerate violence towards anyone. An example of finding common goals is educating our communities on the great story of the State of Israel. We know from experience that if people like Jews, they'll like Israel. The opposite, sadly, is also true. So that's why we run programs touching about the diversity of this great city of New York, how we all work together, and of course, our missions program. The missions serve a purpose that is even larger than visiting Israel. The mission's purpose is to establish a relationship with the Jewish community, because long after that trip, the relationships that started come to fruition and deepen. To me today, though, the most important issue that we're facing is security. Close to half the terrorist plots that have been uncovered in the city of New York since September 11 have been aimed towards the Jewish community. Unfortunately now, the threats that our institutions face, we share with our fellow religionists and others around the world. We enter these institutions for the serenity of our community. We enter them for spirituality. We enter for a moment of peace. And yet, when we enter a house of worship today, we're vulnerable. When our children go to school, they're vulnerable. When our seniors go to a community center, they're vulnerable. And at those vulnerable moments, the gap between good and evil is about as great as it can be. And if we can step into that gap and stop evil from occurring, then we will have made that school, that synagogue, the community safer. Then we will have made society safer, not just for ourselves, but for our neighbors as well. We know all too painfully from the Tree of Life Synagogue in Pittsburgh, from the Emmanuel African Methodist Church in Charleston, to the mosques in New Zealand, that we must do more. So why do I do this? My wife Judy says that our family dances at the edge of history. But she also says sometimes we're in the middle of the horror. My mother's family was Czech, and suddenly they weren't Czech anymore because the Nazis came in. She and her family were sent to Terezin when she was 10 years old. Her father was murdered by the Nazis, and she was eventually liberated by the Russian army on March 10, 1945. On March 13, 1945, she turned 15 years old. After the war, my mother and my grandmother went to Bogota, Colombia, because some family had emigrated there, and that's really all that was left. My father, who grew up in Vienna, left in the 1930s, also ended up in Colombia. He had a prominent restaurant in Bogota, which is where my parents married and where I was born. When I wrote this, I actually want to point out that I wasn't born in the restaurant. And we did what all good Colombians do. We moved to Miami in 1963. My parents, like many of yours, made a very, very important decision. They immigrated to the United States because they wanted their children to grow up as Americans. And it's a decision that I am mindful of and grateful every day of my life. But we know that hatred of Jews didn't end at the end of 1945. My family experienced it again. In August of 1970, my late sister was traveling home for visiting my grandparents in Frankfurt when her flight, TWA Flight 741, was hijacked to Jordan by Palestinian terrorists. She was held hostage for only one reason. She was Jewish. She was 15 years old, an American citizen, and when asked by the terrorists, "Are you Jewish?" she said yes. She could have said no and been released with the other American citizens who were not Jewish. She stood up to them because she thought it was important, and she ended up experiencing the same hate that my mother and father had experienced early on. Fortunately, she was released after 10 days, and we were reunited, but we realized that we cannot take our safety for granted. To the Palestinian terrorists, there was no difference between Jewish and Zionist. Not then, not now. So why do I do what I do? I've been drawn to the JCRC because of the importance of the work to protect the Jewish people and to improve relations between Jewish community and others in the city of New York. Connecting communities, helping to make them feel safe is what drew me to this organization. And during the past 3 years, we've very worked hard to continue that work. But the work's not done. Last year, when the Polish government passed a law regarding how to characterize the Holocaust, I and other leaders of this community met with our good friend, the Polish Consul General of New York, to discuss it and to express our dismay. For me, it was the most difficult meeting I've had of all the many meetings I've had as president of the JCRC. I simply could not imagine that 74 years after the end of the genocide, we would still be having these conversations. Somehow this stuff keeps coming back, and it weighs very heavily on me. We are reminded in the Passover Haggadah that in every generation there are those who are out to destroy us, but the Almighty saves us every time. Tonight, we're between the holiday of Purim, where we were saved from genocide by our own doing, and Passover, where God redeemed us from slavery. To me, it raises the question, when we are threatened, Do we wait for God to act, or has the Almighty given us the tools to act for ourselves? I believe that we've been given the tools to act for ourselves and the imperative to do so. Today, at home, we're faced with challenges from both sides of the political spectrum. From the right, we have those who glorify the Holocaust to those who deny it, and we're challenged by fictional conspiracies that threaten us. These people are dangerous, and they have shown that they will do physical harm and murder. To the left, we're also attacked and challenged by fictional conspiracies that threaten us. There are also those who glorify the Holocaust, and those narratives who seek to destroy us by separating Judaism from Zionism. To us, trying to separate one ism for the other is the same kind of Jew hatred and is dangerous and makes us feel very uncomfortable, just like the extreme right. Recently, there are those who have thought to question our patriotism and our right as Americans to have a voice in our government. They seek to separate Jews from being Americans. How dare they? Walk through the cemetery at Omaha Beach, walk through the cemetery at Arlington National Cemetery, and see the crosses, the Stars of David, and the crescents, all Americans who've died for their country. So, a lot has happened in the last 3 years, and we've navigated through it. I'm proud that we spoke out forcefully after the events in Charlottesville, and with our call to action that was signed on by over 400 community leaders across the city of New York. We did great work with the immigrant communities of New York when they felt threatened. Our mission to Israel with 12 Caribbean pastors led them to take their own congregation with over 500 people on their own mission to Israel. We have been welcome in the churches of New York for our annual commemoration of the legacy of the late Dr. Martin Luther King. 154 years after the end of slavery, America's struggle for freedom and dignity continues. I am very, very proud that we are allies in that struggle. And just a few weeks ago, sadly, we stood with our Muslim friends in solidarity over the horrific murders in New Zealand, and it was across all 5 boroughs. We have provided security screenings to many Jewish schools and synagogues to help them become safer. The JCRC is the agency that sends out the threat alerts and information from law enforcement to our community, and that work is growing. We have a wonderful working relationship with the NYPD. Law enforcement agencies protect us, and we also work with the New York Crime Stoppers, New York City Police Foundation, to highlight hate crimes. Our statement on the Pittsburgh tragedy was such that we just didn't want to say thoughts and prayers. Rather, we declared that words matter, and those who use inflammatory language in the public square bear the responsibility for the hate that they arouse. The blood is spilled is on their hands. This is a theme now that you hear lots of public officials talk about. That was us. So my goal is this, to talk about security and safety, but I didn't want to end on a dour note. So I thought I would end on some good news. You heard just a little while ago that Airbnb announced that they are no longer going to observe the terrible, terrible policy, boycott, divestment, and sanctions against Israel. It was through the work of the Conference of Presidents and the JCRC, but really the work of Tom DiNapoli, New York State Controller, that quietly got that turned around. Tom, we are grateful for your leadership, your steadfastness, and the integrity with which you hold that office. So, my goal tonight is to make sure that we have the resources to protect and enhance our communities, this great city of New York. As president of this organization, I want to be able to say that we did everything that we could to make this city safer, not just for us, for our children, our grandchildren, our great-grandchildren, and those to come. So, with your help, we can do it. I thank you for supporting the JCRC of New York, the Jewish Community Relations Council of New York. I'm Yisrael Chai. God bless America. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Charlie. Thank you so much to the Attorney General of the State of New York, Letitia James, Oprah Winfrey. I'm never going to forget that evening, but I'm just going to wrap up with a number of acknowledgments. Obviously, we're so thankful to each and every one of you for participating here this evening and for joining us at this annual JCRC Gala. As you know, that our objective is to build working relationships with multiples of partners throughout the community. Many of them are here this evening. I am unfortunately not going to be able to name all of them personally, but I think that all of our non-Jewish friends who have been part of JCRC's fellowships, missions to Israel, many other activities deserve a very warm round of applause. In terms of our public officials who are here, once again, I want to say thank you to the Mayor of the City of New York, David Dinkins, to our District Attorney, Eric Gonzalez, to the City Council members who are here in the room. I know Vanessa Gibson is here, but I believe that Helen Rosenthal was here as well inside of the room, and many others were at the reception. I also want to acknowledge the presence, not only, of course, of Ambassador, Consul General of Israel in New York, Dani Dayan, but also our great and dear friend, the Consul General of France in New York, Anne-Claire Legendre. Clearly, we have to offer gratitude to our co-MCs this evening, Mark and Jen. Mark Wolf, Jennifer Falk, our announcer, we call that the voice of God, Naftali Friedman. He played God this evening. Our past Gala honorees who have been with us, Tom Blumberg, Margot and John Katzmatidis, Gary Jacob, Jeff and Ben Levine, Matt Marilis, Jason Muss, Elizabeth Velez, and Ron Wiener. Special acknowledgments as well to our Gala co-chairs, Zoya Raines-Friedman, Esther Fuchs, Gary Jacob, Dr. Donald Kastenbaum, Jerry Levin, Jeff Levine, Michael Lustig, Janice Shorenstein, Ken Sunshine, Ron Wiener, Alan Wiener, and Mark Wolf. A round of applause for them. All of our officers and board of directors have been acknowledged, so we thank you for participating, of course, and all of the sponsors for this evening as well. Your support has led to an extraordinary achievement that JCRC has raised close to $1.1 million for this event. This event, though, would not happen without the involvement of the JCRC staff. I'm very grateful to Charlie for many reasons, but one of them is his warm feelings for those of us who toil on a day-to-day basis within JCRC's office and out in the field. So I really want to thank everyone who was involved in putting this event together and all the events that you saw in the photos as well as in the video, and for those who participated in various fellowships and on missions, but particularly for this evening, two individuals stand out, Grant Silverstein and Marcy Fishman. Charlie and I get a lot of the credit for certain things, but we know that were it not for the work that is put in, the expertise as well of the JCRC staff, we would never, ever be as successful as we are. So with that, I want to thank you again for being here. Wish everyone in the Jewish faith a happy Passover, the Christian faith a happy Easter, and look forward to seeing you again at JCRC events, not just at the Gala, but hopefully next year as well at the Gala. Please join us outside for our dessert reception in the foyer. Thank you very, very much, everyone. Shalom.